Welcome to the video, Altered States, Constructionism, and Personal Growth. My name is Dr. Stephen Bacon. I'm a clinical psychologist in Santa Barbara, California, and I've spent the past decade writing books and researching exactly how psychotherapy works. Apollonian versus Dionysian change. Apollonian change is gradual and incremental and takes place in a step-by-step manner. It often requires discipline, perseverance, and fortitude. It is usually positive, but in some cases, such as participating in an unethical environment such as politics, it can be negative. Dionysian change, in contrast, is nonlinear and irrational. One quickly and rapidly moves from one level of consciousness to another. Although it is rapid, it is often durable and long-lasting. Common examples include epiphanies, altered states, and trauma. Because trauma is so omnipresent, Dionysian change is frequently negative. Significantly, advocates for positive Apollonian change tend to be suspicious of Dionysian change. They worry about its durability and are often allergic to all forms of altered states. In addition, Apollonians are always suspicious of any change methodology that fails to embrace their principles of hard, painful, challenging, and slow. They frequently argue that there are no shortcuts. Sacred space. Humans archetypally divide the environment into sacred space and secular space. Easy to understand examples include entering a church, temple, or being in a wilderness nature versus being in civilized space. When a person believes that they have entered sacred space, they accept that the rules for change and growth in sacred space are different than the ones that operate in secular space. Change in sacred space is magical. It is the home turf of epiphanies, experiences of grace, and the sudden turnarounds powered by love, compassion, and overwhelming exposures to truth. The denizens of sacred space are seen as spiritual beings, or even gods and demigods. Mentors and teachers are believed to be divinely inspired and possessed of mysterious spiritual powers. Encounters in sacred space seem oddly meaningful, giving birth to the synchronistic feeling that everything is happening for a purpose and that the universe is in dialogue with oneself. Altered states. Entering a sacred space is always associated with being in an altered state. The most basic way to differentiate a standard state of consciousness from an altered state is that in a standard state, the cultural rules that define reality are intact. In an altered state, the power of these rules is suspended. This can range from permission to be free, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, to disorientation, I'm in Africa and don't know how I'm supposed to feel or behave, to formal altered states, I took LSD and I'm hallucinating, to trauma. I just got held up at knife point and I'm afraid I might be killed. Given that Apollonians are always guardians of cultural reality, it is easy to understand why they have a visceral resistance to altered states. For the purpose of change, the most significant thing about altered states are that they are associated with Dionysian change. Being in an altered state implies that change can be rapid, profound, and lasting. Identity stability. We are already aware that Apollonian change is associated with hard work, slow change, and perseverance. In addition, Apollonian is associated with identity stability. This can be helpful if one likes their current identity and is primarily committed to continuity. But for those in the change and growth business, stability is the enemy. This is particularly true for those who have all or part of their identity connected to ideas like, I am broken, or this part of me is beyond redemption. Such individuals especially benefit from Dionysian change. One can even argue that Apollonians who have positive identities are equally beholden to Dionysian change. The most effective jail cell is one that appears to be attractive. Put another way, higher order change always requires leaving what is comfortable and safe and venturing into the unknown, the uncontrollable, the unpredictable. Limits of Apollonian change. There is no doubt that Apollonian change causes a person to be better. The question is whether it causes a person to be different. Those who consider their change goals in a spiritual context argue that higher order change requires stepping outside the program's structure, constructions, of any given culture. Wisdom is cross-cultural and supercultural. In this sense, some kind of immersion in sacred space and some realization about the limits of culturally defined reality is required. In this sense, seekers of higher order change are always constructionists, whether they formally embrace that label or not. Traditional altered states. The simplest example of an altered state is one that is caused by a substance, like LSD or alcohol. The outcomes of these experiences is strongly dependent on the framing involved. The difference between an MDMA experience that transforms a marriage via a shared empathic connection and the same drug used to party at a rave is profound. These profound differences demonstrate the power of construction. If a drug experience is defined as an adventure in personal growth, it can become that. If it is defined as a fun entertainment, it becomes that. The altered state has some power in itself, and there are always some stories about stumbling into altered states and profound transformation. However, the reliable power of altered states is accessed when the individual approaches them with an intention of transformation. The Camino example. Some people walk the pilgrim road in Spain, the Camino de Santiago, with a sense of magic, feeling that they are participating in a spiritual journey that has been transforming people for hundreds of years. They meditate daily on the concept that their journey occurs in two dimensions, a real-world one of walking, eating, and sleeping, and a higher one where they are advancing on a path that leads to a sacred destination. All paths that end in sacred space have a sacred quality themselves. The path participates in the terminus. Other walkers on the Camino simply enjoy the fresh air, the exercise, the scenery, and the cuisine. They may be more relaxed and fit at the end of their journey, Apollonian improvements, but they miss the opportunity for Dionysian change. Defining sacrality. Arguably the preeminent scholar of sacred space is Mircea Eliade. He wrote books defining and discussing sacred space and sacred time, for example, Holy Days, Mardi Gras, across many cultures and historical periods. Along the way, he discussed the world tree, the origin and end of time, the myth of the eternal return, and the relationship between the denizens of sacred space, the gods, and humans. What is strikingly evident about his work is his affirmation that entry into sacred space and time creates altered states, and altered states have the potential to create experiences of transformation, redemption, and affirmation. The archetypal imperative. Eliade's first principle is that humans are archetypally required to divide space into secular and sacred. Even atheists and completely unspiritual people have this unconscious compulsion to differentiate sacred and profane space. Examples abound, including wilderness versus habituated space, immersion in art and music versus working, heroic endeavors versus daily life, birth, death, and passionate sexuality versus prosaic relationships. Jung's famous quote, "Vocatus atqua, non vocatus Deus adorit," called or not called, God is present, exemplifies the archetypal nature of the presence of the sacred. The frame and the characteristics. Eliade does list a number of archetypal characteristics of sacred space. For example, he discusses the role of the sacred mountain, the sacred tree, stones, and waters, each of which has innate qualities in terms of defining sacred space. Even with these helpful characteristics, Eliade makes it clear that the frame, the story we tell that defines a space or experience as sacred, is indispensable to the total perception of sacrality. This frame consists of an introduction and a debriefing. Telling a story about sacrality includes both the expectations one has of sacrality and the post-experience interpretations. the conclusion that what occurred during that experience was truly sacred. Sacralizing the world. Individuals on a spiritual path often attempt to sacralize the entire world. As an example, Ram Dass once said, quote, "Treat everyone you meet like God in drag," close quote. These kinds of statements are fairly common on the spiritual path. This concept that there are no experiences in life that are not directly caused by or connected to the divine is an attempt to cultivate the consciousness that the sacred is omnipresent and available in each moment in life. From an altered states perspective, this suggests that the spiritual seeker is invited to live in a reality that is permanently altered, a state which sees spiritual presence peeking through each moment of secular experience. Put another way, the degree to which a seeker transforms secular experience into sacred experience marks their level of evolution on the path. Accessing the sacred inside the profane is a human gift that can be developed with effort and understanding. Formal and informal altered states. From a personal growth perspective, we can divide altered states into formal and informal practices. Formal practices are experiences where there is a structured experience that is specifically designed to create an altered state. Examples include taking psychedelics, going on a pilgrimage, participating in a meditation retreat, giving birth or being present as someone dies, and attending a growth workshop at a place like Esalen. Informal practices are ones where the individual creates or co-creates an experience where they feel that the sacred peeks through the profane. To accomplish this, such individuals deconstruct prevailing cultural reality in an attempt to access a deeper reality lying beneath it. Examples include a profound conversation with a friend or lover, helping another person wake up from the bonds of conventional reality, a deep moment of sexual connection that feels archetypal, or creating a moment, perhaps on a walk or a journey, where it feels as if one has a vision or sense of the sacred penetrating the secular. The importance of altered states. At a minimum, altered states provide a visceral experience that there is a reality or an underlying substrate beyond the conventional. The maximum benefit is hard to define, given that the maximal altered state, whether an epiphany or other numinous experience, is often associated with concepts like limitlessness, universal, truth, and infinite. Rumi says, "On a day when the wind is perfect, the sail just needs to open, and the world is full of beauty. Today is such a day." Altered states are the key to entering this world. Remember that Apollonians prize being better, and Dionysians wish to be different. Rumi comments, "Run from what's comfortable, forget safety, live where you fear to live. Destroy your reputation, be notorious. I have tried prudent planning long enough." The balance. Each seeker creates their own sense of balance between formal and informal experiences. Certainly, formal experiences are more important as one begins a path of personal growth, but that does not mean that they lack importance later in life. It's true that as one becomes more facile at moving between conventional reality and altered reality, informal experiences tend to become more common. However, this does not negate the importance of continuing to seek formal experiences as needed. Chop wood, carry water. That said, the advanced seeker, who is skilled at experiencing the sacred in the seeming secular, often appears to be living a conventional life. The novice says to the master, "What does one do before enlightenment?" "Chop wood, carry water," replies the master. The novice asks, "What then does one do after enlightenment?" "Chop wood, carry water." The difference is that the master now does all actions in sacred space and in an altered state. Framing and debriefing. The importance of framing and debriefing has already been discussed briefly. Recall that in personal growth, we are attempting to transform the elephant with our interventions. More specifically, altered states create the possibility to have rapid, profound, and permanent transformations of the elephant. Framing is done for the elephant. When you tell yourself, "The Camino has been trod by thousands of people. for hundreds of years. It has been sanctified by God. Pilgrims who approach the journey with the right attitude can experience the grace of God. You are actually setting up the elephant to have the transformatory experience. Similarly, when you discuss your pilgrimage with other seekers, or when you return home and you explain your altered state and what it has wrought, this debriefing process is part of the ongoing effort to transform the elephant. Dissociation and presence. Dissociation and framing debriefing the elephant is a vital part of creating and using altered states. This means that the writer provides the introduction and the debriefing for the elephant. This requires a disidentification with the elephant. Paradoxically, as one experiences altered states, dissociation breaks down. Altered states are characterized by a sense of presence and immediacy. There is no me in the elephant, consciousness, and programmed unconscious. Rather, there is the experience of simply showing up for the altered states experience as the thing in itself. Begin in the finite, end in the infinite. Rumi says, there is one way of breathing that is shameful and constricted. Then there's another way, a breath of love that takes you all the way to infinity. Altered states begin with pain, move through healing, and then go beyond healing. Recall Rumi's promise. There's a morning inside you, waiting to burst open into light. Dionysian personal growth. Altered states are the sine qua non of Dionysian personal growth. In that sense, they need to be consciously included in any meaningful personal growth strategy. The more you experiment with altered states, the more you can see the opportunities all around. Ramdas argued that the spiritual is ever present to those who know how to see. Altered states are the key to this seeing. Rumi again. Keep walking, though there's no place to get to. Don't try to see through the distances. That's not for human beings. Move within, but don't move the way fear makes you move.